Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin of Gosselin Associates. As always, thank you for clicking on this episode, which happens to be the final of 2023. We are calling it the best of the Healthcare Facilities Network for 2023. I've always wanted to do a best of show. I've never been on a show. I've never been on a network until now. And so since we do it, I figured, well, I'm going to make a best of. But this episode, two parts. What we've done is we've gone back through all of our episodes for the year, over 140 of them, and we've taken 1 to 2 minute clips from those episodes and we've put them into this best of. These are clips that haven't been shown before, and I think if you watch it, you will learn, as you do in most of our shows, hopefully something about healthcare facilities management, maybe something about careers, something about leadership. We run the gamut in this particular episode. So we start way back in April with filling the pipeline, and we go all the way up through our latest release with Steve Carberry. So clips from all of those episodes will be included in this best of. I tried to get everybody who's appeared, I tried to get you onto this best of series. And if you're not there, I do apologize. It's hard to get everybody because we've had so many people on this year. And do know that if you appeared on the network this year, thank you so much for doing so. I really appreciate it. I know you gave your time freely, and I am so appreciative of you doing that for us. So thank you. As this is also the last episode of 2023, the holidays are upon us. Sitting here in front of our Christmas tree, got the Christmas tie on. Probably wear it 3 or 4 times a year. I wish you a Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. By the time this comes out, Hanukkah would probably be over, or the time you watch it, because you never know when people watch. So if you celebrate Hanukkah, hope you had a happy Hanukkah. Whatever you celebrate, I wish you to celebrate it well. You never know these days. So whatever it is, I hope you have a joyous time, a peaceful time. I also hope you get some time away from work. We all probably celebrate the New Year, so Happy New Year. Because again, these are the final episodes of 2023. We'll be back in 2024. We're already planning episodes for 2024. Have some new ideas that we would like to roll out in 2024. And if you have an idea for a show, as always, please contact me. So with that said, I wish you a joyous holiday season. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the best of. Watch for episode 2 coming out in the very near future. As always, I appreciate you watching.
Yeah, I'm squirming in my seat here.
I figured you would be.
Right. Everybody is saying such great points. And you know, I don't want to copy what everybody's already said. So here's what I want to add new to it. And you and I talked about this over the phone. When we were all kids, right? We were in the backyard playing, right? We were either playing police officer, firefighter, doctor, teacher. We were playing one of those careers, right? I don't think any of us here were playing, oh, I'm gonna be a facilities manager. So I think what we need to do, on top of what everybody else has said, we have to Christine's point, we got to get to the high schoolers. We got to get to the 8th graders. We got to get to the 7th graders. And we got to get them playing in the yard, being facility director, right? Or being carpenter, or all of it. And I don't know what the answer to that is yet, but we have to make it attractive to young people so they are doing that. I oversimplified it, but I think that's what we need to get to.
We would do all the construction. We would do all the construction, the operations, but things have begun so, specialized and also so complex. The amount of regulatory compliance when we first started. I started in healthcare. I remember I went to a Joint Commission seminar in the early 90s, and I said to the guy, I'm getting old. It was plant technology and safety management. He told me when I started, it was just plant technology. So I realized that he was a little bit older than me, and I'm going to be 57 this year, and
Right,
so I think that I thought that the complexity of the jobs have really changed, where like facility operations has really come a long way, in developing the right formula, of how to do it, and really developing plans to, because you're seeing these facilities are, coming to end of life. A lot of these facilities that we're working in have been underinvested deferred maintenance for 20, 30 years. So I think that we've seen a lot of changes of how people start seeing the roles. So I think that the separations of roles of facility operations, which is maintaining the facility, maintaining the infrastructure, maintaining the PMs, maintaining compliance, then going to construction, working in a occupied building of that specialty to do that, and then breakdowns of like safety management, which typically falls under the facility management role, at least in a traditional model. And so I think that a lot of specialties have broken down, where more the guy used to be the kind of like the sweeper in soccer. I'm not a big soccer guy, but I think it's a sweeper or stopper, but
Yeah, okay.
it has to be that all-around player, that can play, offense or defense. But I think it's becoming more specialized as at least in a large organization. I mean, Barnabas is a tremendous organization, but has become more specialized in those areas. And real estate management, I think that healthcare has realized they have a lot of real estate that, they're not managing as well as they should be from a real estate management standpoint. I think that we're really starting to understand that going forward and getting people on board who really understand how to manage, not just
So now here's where imagination comes in again, because he's on the phone, he's talking to an applicant, and I'm fidgety as well as nervous, really didn't want to be there. So as I walk around, I start studying the pictures, and then I come across hanging on the wall was what is called a unit citation. In other words, an entire unit does something really, really good. They get an award, a unit commendation. Just so happens there was a unit citation hanging on the wall. There was a reason for it, because it was representing one of the greatest history rescues in the Coast Guard that happened off the coast of Cape Cod in 1952. And the short story of it, the Coast Guard sent out a 36-foot patrol boat in heavy weather, a nor'easter to be exact, and rescued 28 people off of a freighter in heavy seas in a 36-foot boat. So I read this thing and I said, wow. And the recruiter stopped this phone call, looked at me and said, I guarantee you'll do something like that in your first 4 years in the Coast Guard.
Wow.
That's how I ended up in the Coast Guard.
I think Patrick did a great job talking about the who and the how. And what popped into my mind is why. Why do we do this? And it is to operate a safe facility, safe for our guests, our employees, and a safe environment for our patients. And so as he's talking about all these different codes and stuff, you look at the root of these. The NFPA 101, the Life Safety Code, is basically an entire book that tells you how to get out of a building in an emergency, right? The whole thing is designed to show you how to egress a building. NFPA 99, specific to healthcare facilities. So that's another great code for newer folks to be looking at. But yeah, just the why was what popped into my mind. We could talk about the who's looking at us all day long, because we've got local fire marshals, state health inspectors, I don't know, anybody else that decides to show up that has a shiny badge that makes my pager go off. So at the root of it, we want to create a safe environment.
I love being involved in treating of patients, and as a facilities guy, we look at are we involved in the patient care? Well, we probably impact patient care outside of a doctor and a nurse, probably more than anybody else in the healthcare industry. I mean, we deliver the power to the instruments or whatever we need to do. We deliver the med gas should it be required. We deal with the plumbing and water systems. Those are just things that nobody really pays attention to because they're always there. But somebody has to look after those. And I think that's why I do it. I want to teach people why we do the things we do. And I think that to me is why I'm in this business.
I wanted to actually, well, if you'll allow me just a second to go back and answer that how compliance has changed over the years, for the the surveyors real quick. Michael Craig jumped in. I just wanted to add 2 cents real fast. I'm the younger one of the group, and I'm not saying you guys are old by any means. All right?
I'm offended.
No. But when you challenge a surveyor and you politely debate a surveyor, it is perceived a little differently. You have been in it for 20 plus years, whereas me being in it for 10 years ago without a beard, I mean, I look like I just got out of high school, and so I had to be really careful how I talk to surveyors and how I, because go on back up.
Keep going.
Yeah, for real. And there it is. So I never tried to challenge one like in front of a big group. If I knew there was a surveyor that was feeling intimidated at all, like if I could see that gear was switched, I would take a step back as the total student from there on out. And we like you, Craig, honestly, from day one, since I came in the door in healthcare, because I came from the fire marshal's office, I never had a second thought to, hey, if you're wrong, you're wrong. This is not right. We need to talk about this, blah, blah, blah. So I pushed back during our very
The
first.
surveyor's there, you were into a intense fellowship. How's that? Just what's going on.
Can you define that intense fellowship?
You're giving your interpretation of what it says, and he's saying, no, you're wrong, or no, that's not how I see it.
Excellent.
Okay.
This is Peter Martin. If you or your organization is interested in advertising or partnering with the Healthcare Facilities Network, including sponsoring content, then please email me using the barcode in the lower right of your screen. From the trades level to the vice president level, from planning, design, construction, project management, compliance, safety, and security, the Healthcare Facilities Network reaches FM people where FM people are.
Balance was always number one for me.
Okay.
Claire touched on the personable experience with the hiring manager and being so flexible with events going on in your life. I think that's key. As COVID has shown, and everyone on this call has mentioned, there's a lot of stress being in healthcare.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that one. After working in healthcare facilities management for, I would say, solid 10 years, my husband can definitely vouch for this one, is that I was never not on call. And Jim, you had said it too, we're always on call. I recall the day before my wedding, my boss called me.
And as everybody else is saying, if I can get an extra hour and a half back in my day just from commuting, that can have a really big impact on me and my family and my happiness. I'd say, like, when I was in the HFM space, I would try to guard my vacation time ruthlessly. It's kind of like a trade-off, like, hey, I'm on call all the time, but on these days I just can't be.
So I was a facilities manager before this job. I'm about 90% remote. So like I'm working from home today. I was in the office the last couple of days. If we're doing teaching, we usually have to go somewhere for a seminar or something like that. And at some point, the pandemic kind of stopped this, but my department's also supposed to participate in surveys once a quarter. So, just to make sure that we're well-rounded, we know what the survey experience is like. I haven't gotten to do that, and I'm really looking forward to when it happens again. They let us do that again. So there's some travel and some of that involved in my job, which is great, because I do like to be able to get out and about a little bit. But I will say it was a breath of fresh air to not have a 2-hour commute every day. When you get into the office at about 6:30 and you left at about 6:30 most days, I'd say, and then you got home at about 7:30 at night, that's a long day.
So if we think about construction, right, we hire a general contractor to come build it. So we don't necessarily own all of that. Things happen that we don't have direct control over. So parts and pieces of that construction would fall into that scope 3 category. And then we would rely on that general contractor to manage that manage their scope 1 and 2, which is our scope 3.
Right. Right.
during that process. That's where modularity comes in to help reduce that. When they do things offsite, they do it in a controlled environment. It takes something this big and shrinks it down.
So, so it's funny, kind of as I was reading up, this is even broader or larger than, I'm glad you brought up scope 1, 2, and 3, because that enlarges it even more than what I was initially thinking. I mean, I was kind of stuck in the facilities world of it, but you're talking, your subcontractors and your GCs who are driving their pickups to your construction site. It even goes to that level.
Absolutely. When we call elevator companies in to come do service on our elevators, they have a scope 3 trail that we own that comes into us. And then we're going to in turn ask them, how are you managing your scope 1 and 2? Because it's our 3. And the industry has been reacting favorably to this. So, major mechanical companies are really focused. Elevator service companies are really focused. Equipment manufacturers that provide service and equipment to the hospitals are really focused, where they're developing their own sustainability groups, because we will start asking for, certificates, if you will. This is our footprint that we bring to you with this asset, with this piece of equipment. So, because we're accountable for it, right? And we have to be able to account for when it comes in and when it leaves.
So taking your ESG hat off and putting your, let's go back to maybe when you were a construction project manager, or even, when you're accountable for construction, I have to imagine subcontractors, contractors are rolling these costs up into general conditions that come at you. Is that?
Yeah.
And what are you seeing with that type of, is there a premium?
Yeah, we're on the very front end of this right now at Trinity, because the majority of our projects really have already been in flight. But I'm having conversations with general contractors about the future, about how we manage, the whole scope 3 process in the future as you build.
What do you think, what can be done, or what would you suggest to that person who's saying, I don't have time or money to do it? What can they do?
Yeah, we've done a lot of presentations at TAFM and at ASHI that you get guys who raise their hand and say, I'm managing the same size hospital you have with 5 people.
Yeah, and they're not lying. I mean,
right, and it's hard. Like I'm sorry. Some of it is not being woe is me.
Yeah,
there's a way. There is a way, and it's not easy. And again, I continue to say over and over, we're very fortunate. But part of that is develop the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, you need to go find, is it your boss? Is it the leader, the head of your HR group? Is it somebody who can help be an advocate for you whenever you go forward and say, hey, this is some money we need to spend. So if a rural, critical access hospital guy says, hey, I don't have any money, I don't have any time for that stuff, start on growing you. Once you grow you'll realize that I can grow my team.
I think you need to come in with the mindset of almost a train the trainer approach, kind of like Clayton said. One person's going to go do this and then they're going to train everybody else. And that's really what I did with the CHFM. I went and did it and, studied really hard for it for several years. I had a stack of like 400 flashcards that I carried around with me. But once I passed it, everybody else in the department has used those flashcards. They've been passed around and they're gross now and yellow. But we didn't have to go spend that money again because somebody had already did it. So use that, train the trainer approach. Only one person needs to go learn something and then they need to pass it on to everybody else.
Yeah, I think in engineering, there's so many of us who grew up with our office next to the boiler plant, down in the dark with no windows. We like to work like that. We like to work in secret.
Right.
And you got to stop. You got to say that my work is important. And sometimes the daytime out in front of everybody is the right time to do it, because people need to see it happening.
Yeah.
So taking that same philosophy of, we used to do all this stuff, like we would set up training, we would do engineering, we do all that stuff kind of under the radar. And engineering folks or facilities guys, we usually have a pretty sizable expense budget that we can, slush fund a few things in, just because it costs a lot of money to fix all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you got to be a little more intentional, I believe, to be out in front with your executive leaders. We partnered early with our internal HR and training team. So like all of this training that we're creating, it's all computer-based training, and it lives in our LMS that we use for all of our required annual training. So now that we own it, it's there. They're helping us make sure it's, we're going to review it annually, make sure it's right. But then, all that goes in the employee record. So
Yeah.
getting those, having those conversations early, it also gives you a little bit more validity when you go to the executive team and you say, hey, we're going to spend some money to develop this program. HR is already on board with us. We've worked together on this. We've identified these are some gaps, and this is how we're going to move it forward. And getting, having those relationships that allow you to have those conversations, I think is where it's really, really important.
Learn that might help you better as you go forward in your career with whatever you want to decide to do?
I guess I learned a bit that something has to be designed to also be maintained. I know there are a lot of problems that I guess I ended up running into when helping or following people, is that two things would end up conflicting with each other. Like, the design of the hospital. I know, I think someone, what was it, actuators for the air conditioning? I might be completely wrong. They would be in rooms that were quite inaccessible for maintenance, and you'd have to get in like very specific times, very specific ways. And I guess that was two parts of the design process that weren't maybe realized at the same time. Something like that, I suppose.
Yep. Hey, Robert, that's a pretty good answer, huh?
That is a real world answer that he's actually experienced.
Yeah.
I guess less on the technical side, I was kind of surprised how much work doesn't get done because of lack of communication, or just poor communication, or other bureaucratic logistical issues going on. I was quite surprised to see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably that's another great career lesson, because I think you see that in so many industries. Sure. Now, when we were talking before I hit the record button, you were talking about one of the things that you have found you missed from when you worked full time. What is that?
My IT friends. As much as we complained about the IT guys, right? Technology on the road in RV is very interesting. You don't have immediate access to Wi-Fi unless you get it all set up correctly in your motorhome and everything else. So right now I'm living off the hotspot on my phone. But I might have to reach out to one of them and say, hey, help me get this set up better, so that it's like I warned you, Peter, at any point this screen could go blank and I won't even have any idea why. So yeah.
Well, yeah, that's why I want to ask that question, number one, Carol, because like you just said, if you go blank, then people will understand why. But also the other thing, as you said, IT is always a convenient scapegoat. I mean, everybody. Social media, has social media complicated the lives of an HR professional?
I would say that issues internal to the organization, we don't find out about them through social media, which is a good thing. And I think that's part of the culture, that people feel that they can report those internally.
Yep.
That being said, it's challenging around what's freedom of speech and what's defamation.
Yeah.
What's inappropriate. Certainly we know anything about a patient is very problematic, but really, where do people have what we call concerted protected activity, which means that you can air a grievance, so to speak, on social media. You actually have that right. And of course, managers who just found that somebody wrote, my manager's terrible and won't allow me to do X, Y, and Z. They go like, we want to punish that person for putting that in, and
Yeah.
we can't.
Right.
So then we just need to address what the issue is. Other organizations may find this, but knock on wood, I've been gratified that we more grapple with people putting inappropriate stuff, or kind of where is their private life? What if they say something mean and nasty about a coworker?
Yeah.
How do you address that? Which is also not that easy to deal with, because you're kind of getting into people's relationships outside of work.
Right.
So that's a whole complicated and also a legal realm where case law keeps defining it, because it's relatively new.
About healthcare experience, what about hiring somebody in at a manager level or above without healthcare experience? Does that change your thinking, or does your thinking change at the manager level or above?
Would for me.
It would for you?
Yeah. They got to know what they're walking into. Pretty simply said there, Clay. Well, if there's processes you don't have in play a year at a time, you're sunk.
Yep. Jordan, you agree?
Yeah, so I've talked about it in the past. I've hired folks outside of facility managements to come in and be leaders. This specific person I'm talking about was a project coordinator first, helping out on some construction projects. So she had an opportunity to learn the hospital and learn the game before she was in a full-fledged manager role. So it's so I think that you can do it, but I think that you're kind of asking people to take a step backwards, and they kind of have to do that middle tier role before they're ready to be that full-fledged manager. Because I don't disagree with Clay. I mean, there is a lot to learn and a lot to know, and if you're walking in cold off the street, man, that's a lot to learn.
Funny chain of events. I went to a conference where it was a learning environmental care, a joint commission conference off site, and I rode with my supervisor, and he broke the news to me that he would be retiring, and that he was thinking that I would be the one to take his place, and I was like, this was a shock to me. And so shortly after that, the COO at the time called me into his office and broke the news that he wanted me to step up. And of course, I was the younger guy on the team, and the guys, I was definitely not the one with the seniority. And so I knew that would present some challenges. So I agreed to do it. And I did have some pushback from my fellow employees at the time. But after about a week or so, some very really deep conversations, and
This concludes episode 1. Please return to the Healthcare Facilities Network in the near future to view episode 2. And as always, thank you for watching.